period. And I know I apologize to them a lot now because they're like, is this your fault? Yes, it is. But this is the right perspective. The right perspective. Giving you what you really need. This is the right perspective. Oh, giving you what you really need. Oh, this is the right perspective. Giving you what you really, really need. This is the right perspective. The right perspective. Oh, this is the right perspective. Oh, this is the right perspective. Podcast.
Welcome to the Right Perspective, where we give you what you really, really need. And my first guest, I'm so happy to have her. I'm so used to calling her mama, and she is my mom. She's my spiritual mom. She has taught me what joint heir really means, to be in a family of that. I never doubted that concept until now, what being a joint heir really is. And I wanted to say Shawanda, make sure I said it correctly, Andrews, and she is my spiritual mother. She's more than that, but I just want everybody to know to meet her. So here she is. Say hello to everybody.
Hi, how are you?
And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a mother of 4, 5, including you. I work at Wegmans. I work in the deli section. I love God, and that is about it. I mean,
tell me who you think you are.
who I think I am? Just a servant of God. I'm on this earth to love God and love his people. That's who I think I am.
And Jesus asked a question, who did man say you are? So that's another question. I think all of that works together, because
Right.
we see ourselves as one way, and
Right.
then the people that around us see us sometimes much more than we think we are.
That's true. That's true. I guess in my case, people probably saw me as less than I was. That's usually what I got in my lifetime. People saw me as less than I was. Oh, that's just her. Oh, well, it's just her. She's kind of nobody. That's just her. But, God himself allowed me to understand that I am more than what people say I am.
Tell me a little bit about your background. Was you born and raised in church, or did you go to church later on in life? How was your experience with God growing up?
Well, I grew up Methodist, and they are very, strict and kind of boring. You don't really learn about God. You learn that there is a God, and you learn the Bible stories, basically. And I used to think when I was like 7 or 8 that church was for old people, because that's all I saw. You saw the young people only when we had to sing or Sunday school. And basically, now I went to church every Sunday, and I mean every Sunday, but it was just me and my sister. My mother would get us up, get us dressed, and she would take us to church. She didn't go. Neither did my dad. But we went. We went to Sunday school, and she was supposed to go to church. A lot of times I skipped out of church, but he was supposed to go to church. But I really, and in church, it was a lot of older people. So I'm thinking, well, church must be just for old people. But I had grandparents. So I'm like, well, why aren't my grandparents going to church? They're old, But yeah, I grew up that way. And then when I hit like 13, I actually found out that, oh my gosh, God is kind of real. I started going to Pentecostal church, and in Pentecostal, I actually learned about God. That's where I actually learned about God. I actually learned that he was real and he loved us. And, I actually learned more about him. So that's what made me want to, love him too. Wanted to do whatever he wanted me to do then, so because I gave my life to God when I was 14.
Oh,
so,
wow.
I wanted that. When I found out about it, I was like, oh, it's like this? Wow. So, yeah.
So with that, couple of things, did your parents just let you switch churches like that, or they just didn't care?
Well, my mother and my father got divorced.
Oh,
okay.
So
we moved with our mother. She lived in Baltimore at the time. My dad lived in Kent County, Maryland. So she was given custody of us, and we moved to Baltimore. So she was going to Pentecostal church at the time. So that's what made that switch.
So how was your experience being a young person saved for God in a majority secular world?
It was really, it was intense because my whole world of living changed. Okay. I feel like what you're doing is really good because young people need to know that you need to have good teaching, because if you don't, you're going to be lost and you're not going to know. I particularly didn't have great teaching. I mean, it was good, but it wasn't great. I thought when I gave my life to God, I really thought that what I looked like and how I dressed and what I did determined my safeness, I guess, determined my relationship, which wasn't the truth. I thought that not wearing pants and not wearing makeup and not wearing earrings and wearing dresses past my knees, I thought that was what God wanted, which no, it's not. But at the time I did. So all of those changes were like, what? So I felt like, and you couldn't listen to certain music, and I felt like, okay, I had questions, but I didn't know how to ask the questions. I'm like, okay, well, why would God want to change my whole personality? I mean, I know that you change, you know what I'm saying? But your whole personality, he made you who you are. So why would he want to change your whole personality? So that was my thinking at the time. But these are elders, these are ministers. So I'm like, I'm learning and, listening to them. So I'm thinking, okay, they got to be right. Which, not necessarily. But I grew up, going through the teenage years was kind of hard because, of course, you get talked about, and I'm the church girl, whatever.
The holy roller.
Yes. So, but that part I looked over, and I just kept going, and I did all that I thought I was supposed to do. But I found out later on in my life when I got grown that it was religious stuff. That's the whole concept of God love. He really loves us. I mean, literally, if he didn't, he wouldn't hang on to us like he does, because I really did not know what I was doing, and I thought I was doing what I was supposed to, reading and studying and fasting and praying, I did it religiously, and I had a good heart about it. That's probably, I'm sure, why God was like, okay, I'm gonna hang on to her, but he really does. He hangs on to us until we actually get it. And later on in my life, I actually got it, and I was like, okay. But it took a minute, really. It took years for me to actually get it. And that's kind of a bad thing for me, because I went through a lot of stuff that I probably didn't have to go through. Yeah. But it made me who I am now. So that's why I have the relationship I have with him now, because of all of the stuff that I did go through.
Yeah. Because of that church teaching, and I grew up in an old school church like that too. Back in the day with the guys, we couldn't only wear black or brown,
Right.
Stuff like that. Old school. I tell people that, you couldn't grow up now in the church that I grew up in back in the 80s when I was a little kid, and in the 90s.
No.
Half the people wouldn't be able to take what
They wouldn't
take none of that.
Right.
I know people who had to stand up in the middle of service and repent to the whole church because they were pregnant.
Yes.
They asked the church to forgive them. This stuff I've seen with my own eyes. Yes. Churches now, these people, they walk out.
Yes.
You couldn't sing. They didn't want you to sing in the choir because you could sing a lie as well as tell a lie. I had for us to even sing in the choir when I was younger, we had to be baptized.
Yes.
That's how deep and strict it was for me growing up. So with that and all the changes, not wearing pants and all of that, how did it affect you with other young people? Did you see them because they had pants on that they was going to hell, or was you real judgmental, or you was like, oh, I wish I could be like them?
Both ways. It was like, okay, they have on pants, oh, that's a sin, in my mind. But I'm saying in the back of my mind, it's like, you really want to do that? Because I used to do that. I was used to wearing pants or wearing shorts. I was used to wearing it. I was used to that. So yes, in the back of my mind, I was like, that was the conflict with me. I wanted to do certain things. And it was like, I don't see why we shouldn't be able to. And then I see them and say, oh God, but that's a sin. So it was a conflict. It was just a conflict in my members. I was conflicting, it was hard.
And when you were talking earlier about changing your whole character, now I understand the reason why they did that back then, because they didn't want to have anything to be able to separate them from God, because if they're wearing pants and this and that right. Might be a something to push you from God or whatever, right. and things like that. So I understood that concept to a point me growing up. But I also understand that it pushed a lot of people away from church because it was so judgmental, and it was so soon you walk through the door, you can't even get saved before the mothers and the deacons and all that jumping on you because of how you look.
How you look, and that's to me, that's not what God would do. That's not what He would do,
So with that, how did that also affect you growing up, learning that, I'm not saying it doesn't take all that, because some people it does take all that, right. But how would you mentor the younger women now coming up, learning about God and maybe what they have on or whatever, knowing what you know now and how to encourage them to that? Because some things need to come off.
Yes, some things.
So some days you shouldn't be wearing in church. I watch some of these videos now of how people look in church, and I'm like, oh my God. Yes. I'm like, it way past your knees, is up your thighs, your booty, whatever. So how would you talk to them or let them know that with that there's some truth behind that of how you should look and all of that, but how also would you show them what to do instead of being judgmental or pushing them away?
Right. Basically, I would definitely let them know that, okay, it's not about what you wear. Okay, you should be conservative. I mean, if you feel like, okay, if you see something on someone else and you see everything showing and everything falling out, you look at yourself and say, does that look presentable? Is that conservative enough for me? I was like, you don't have to have everything all, up to your neck, and, but I would try to teach them how to shop conservatively, be a woman, or, don't be, a fat, if I see someone in different clothing, you see something and it doesn't look, like you're showing everything, that you don't want to show people your body parts. You don't want to be hanging out. You want to dress conservatively. You can be sexy and still conservative.
Come on, mother. Come on.
You know, you don't have to have all of that.
You can be paid and still look good. Come on.
Yes, you know, and that's basically what I would tell them, you know, because that's how I had to do myself, you know. As I look at clothing, I put it on, I'm like, no, you know, oh yes, okay, no. I have to, you know, dress appropriately, you know, and that's to me what distinguishes, you know, a person that's in a relationship with God, a person is not, you know, that, you know, you can look at that and see. But I understand what you're saying. Some people seem like they don't know the difference and have things on they shouldn't have on.
So tell me about you being a mother of 4 and walking in God and married and walking in God and hearing the voice of God. And you know how people say that the husband is the head and all of that. Was there any conflict with that? Because I know Pops, I know he's a man of God too, and I'm gonna interview him, you know, later on. It's about being married, you know, and hopefully one day I'm gonna be there too.
Yes.
Being married and having a wife who you know hears from God. How was it conflict, and how did it flow also in the marriage and you raising your kids in that?
Well, I don't think it was a conflict. I feel like
well, not all marriages have conflict. I'm just saying, you know,
right.
Your experiences. Yeah,
right. I'm going to say in ours, I just feel like it kind of flowed because I feel like me and my husband were put together for a reason. So I feel like ours flowed. Now, was it a little kind of yeah, we kind of got a little antsy in there a little bit, but having 4 kids, my thing was when I got all my kids dedicated to God, you know, dedicated back to God, I really meant it. Some people, you know, it's just a formality. They say, oh, okay, I'm going to dedicate my child. No, I really meant it for real. I wasn't playing. My relationship with God is like this. Okay, Lord, I have 4 kids. They're yours. They're not actually all mine. They're yours. So I seriously gave them to him and say like, okay, you daddy to all 4 of these children. You know, that's just me and my relationship with God. I'm like, okay, these are your children for real. So you know, God promised me that he would take care of my kids, all of them. So I'm like, okay, promise. And I told him, I gave them back to you, so please use them. You know, I stayed in constant prayer for my kids. That's to me a must for all mothers. Stay in prayer for your kids. I mean, every day. My kids' names are in my mouth every day. Every day I pray, my kids' names are in my mouth because I want God to use them, period. And I know I apologize to them a lot now because they're like, is this your fault? Yes, it is. But
well, I want you to elaborate on that because I'm trying to get to that part. So I want you to elaborate on that too because I feel like that I love the Bible story about Rebecca and how when she was pregnant, she prayed and asked God what was going on in her womb, and God told her about her kids. Yes. And a lot of people don't do that, you know, or ask God about their kids before they was born. She knew their, I guess it's a destiny or where God wanted them to be at. And so she kind of helped them growing up. Now, she might didn't do it the right way, but she did kind of help push them to where God wanted them to be.
Yes. And me, in mine, I prayed for mine and I told God to use them. Now, he kind of, I'll tell you this story about Kyle. Okay. I had a dream about Kyle. Kyle always said he wanted to join the military when he was in the 9th grade. I'm like, okay. I'm thinking, you know, that probably changed. He's in the 9th grade. He didn't. He kept going with that. Okay. So God let me dream that we were taking him to the Air Force because that's what he was talking about, Air Force at first. He was talking about Air Force, everything was Air Force. So I had a dream that we drove him to the Air Force recruitment center. And when Kyle opened the door, it turned into the Navy recruiting center. So we're looking around like, wait, we see boats in water. And we're looking around like, wait, this is the Navy. And so, and then I woke up and I said, okay, Lord, are you trying to tell me that you want him to go to the Navy? And I was like, and I went in prayer and I said, I said, I'm not telling him. I was like, you better tell him. I was like, because if I tell him, you know how Kyle is. Kyle is one of those headstrong.
Bless the Lord. We know him.
I didn't want him to feel like I was trying to convince him to go to the Navy. So I was like, Lord. I was like, if you want him to go to the Navy, you're going to have to tell him. So that was my prayer. Amen. And I ended my prayer. So when Kyle dreamt the exact same dream a week later. I mean, exact same, down to the T. So I started laughing. And he said, well, I guess I'm supposed to go to the Navy. That's how you want your children to be. You want your children to know that it's God and not them. That's how I try to train my kids. I try to train my kids that what happens in your life is God. It's not coincidence. It's not, it's God directing and leading your life. So he already knew that because he knew me. He knew that I don't play and I have a relationship with God. So he knew that. And when he did that, and I told him right after he said it, I said, yeah, because I had the same dream a week ago. And that's when he said, oh yeah. Well, I was supposed to go to the Navy. So you want your children to know God. They might not have a relationship at the time, but you want them to know God. You want them to know that you want them to have some aspect, because he was about to leave me, and go wherever. So I wanted him to have some type of connection to God, period.
And you said a key point, having a connection with God, because I see so many people who have a connection with their mom.
Yes.
The only God that they know is their mom.
Right.
Because their mom was in church, because their mother did this and mother do that. And when I have seen it, when people have lost their mom, they have lost their whole concept of life, because that's all they evolved around, which is nothing wrong with that. But my grandmother and my family always asked us, like, when something happened in that family, why is the whole family always calm? And I tell them, we are calm because my grandmother taught us to have a relationship with him and not just a relationship with her. Relationship with him, not just a relationship with her. So we are grounded in that. We know that we have to have a relationship with God, because mama's not going to always be there. Daddy's not going to always be there. But we still have to have that connection with God. Yes, we hurt. Yes, we have pain. And we're supposed to. But having a relationship with God is more important than that.
Yes, it is. That's beautiful. Yep.
How did a family who lived in Baltimore end up in a little town called Ozark, Alabama?
Funny you should ask that. My husband didn't know who his father was for 30 years. Okay. Back in the 80s, they had, on the talk shows, they had these things where they would find, relatives. So my husband decides he wants to do that. So I was like, okay. So we paid a little money and he found his father.
Wow. So he went on the radio thing and
it was called US Find or something. And he sent the little money in, and they did the research and sent him the paper.
I never do that. Go ahead. That's something I can ask him when I interview him.
Yes, and found out where his father was, had an address, number, and everything. So he calls his father, he goes to visit, and he comes back, and he says, oh, it's nice down there, it's country. Of course, I wasn't paying attention at the time. I was listening to him and I wasn't. It's another story. I was listening to him and I wasn't. And God told me, hey, listen to your husband. And I'm like, looking like, okay. So that's when I actually turned around and actually started listening to him talk. So what he was saying was we should move down there. And I was like, God was like, oh no, she ain't having none of that. But that's why I wasn't listening. So I was like, okay, you want me to listen because you want me to move. And I'm like, no, we're not having that. So me and God had a little episode with that. I was saying no, and God was like, get your head together. So eventually, after me fussing at God for a minute, I accepted that we were moving. But God is the one that told us to move. And he knows that. I kept asking him questions at first. I was like, well, why this and why that? And I was like, man. So I finally calmed down. You see, that's why I say God, he loves us for real. Yeah. I finally calmed down and I said, well, what am I moving all the way to Ozark for? And he said, for your children. Now he knows I love my kids. My kids are my heart. When he said that, I'm done. Okay, you say move for my kids. You got me there. Let's go. So, and basically he said, you're moving for your kids, and you're moving for, I need you to know a little bit more about me. Mm. And I'm looking like, we're already talking. We're having a conversation. Is there more than this? And I didn't know. I had developed my relationship with him, and I was good. And I'm like, well, we already conversating, Lord, and there's more. And there was, but I didn't know that. But he did. He knows. So I'm like, there's more than this. But yeah, it was more. So when we moved, my relationship grew, and my kids got blessed. So it was what we wanted. It was what we needed, both. But yeah.
And I know the experience of moving from one place to another place just to hear God more. Because we see, especially us in walking around in our authority and the gifts as prophets and ministers and all of that, we have in the head that, God, I can hear you where I'm at.
Yeah.
I'm fine right here. I can hear you right here. God, you speak to me when I wake up in the morning. Why do I have to go somewhere else to understand who you more? And sometimes we forget that it's not just about us, it's about the whole family.
Exactly. And that's exactly what it was about, the whole family. And it was more. I at that point had in my thinking that only ministers and pastors and people of higher, esteem spoke in tongues, and I didn't know that I could too. I didn't know that was something I could do too. That was not in my hearing or not in my thinking. And God had to, give me that revelation, because I wasn't getting it where I was, and probably never would have. So it was a lot of things that I needed to know, and I needed to grow to get my relationship better and to help my kids. Yeah. So it helped the whole family. So yeah, in that aspect, I was like, okay, Lord, you're right. It's what I needed to do, and I thank him for it. I thank him for being obedient, and us being obedient. Yes. We were in a house that we didn't even furnish. The whole house was furnished when we got there. So, I mean, come on. My husband had a job, the house was furnished, and we were good. So when he tells you to do something, just do it. Because when you do it, you're going to be blessed when you get to wherever you got to go.
After we have our little fits.
Little
fits with God, because I feel you, because sometimes me and God be having a conversation like, what's going on? And I know the deep folks are like, no, I don't do all that. No, me and God be having it going in and out. Because we try to figure out, and God like, I got you. I know you got me, God, but
what?
and I'm like, God, but okay, God, I trust you. And sometimes you just got to go, because I feel sometimes we was fed, but we were still malnutrition. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. Sometimes we just had enough just to keep us alive.
Yes.
And God said, I want you to be more abundant. I want to feed you.
Yes.
The water that I give you ain't the thirst anymore. Yes. We just sipping, and God said, I want to take you to a place where not only that you are fed, but you have energy, you have strength to do what I'm calling you to do.
Yes. And a whole lot of things were revealed to me. I a lot of things were revealed to me when I moved. And I didn't know where to go at first. I was like, okay, Lord, we're here. I don't know nothing about this place. I don't know the churches. I don't know how these people, I don't know anything. So you're going to have to help me. So what I did was I went straight to the phone book and I started looking up churches. The first church I went to, no, that wasn't it. I was like, no, that's not it. So I think me and my kids went. I'm like, no, that's not it. So I looked again. I saw the church that we went to one time in the phone book. Now, when I went back to looking for it again, I couldn't find it, which I figured I said was the enemy because I couldn't find it. And I'm looking, I'm like, I know I saw that church, so I stopped. And I went and looked again. But before I went, I prayed. I said, okay, God, I'm about to look in the phone book again. You're going to help me. So God said, okay, the church that you're going to join, you're all going to go together. Because my husband was working on Sundays. He wasn't going to church with us. So I would take the kids, to try to find a church. So he said, you're going to be together, all together, going to church. Oh, okay. All right, cool. So I did find it. The second time I opened the Bible, opened the phone book, I found it. And I was like, okay, let me call this one. And me, I'm crazy and weird. So I asked them, I said, please tell me y'all shout and y'all praise the Lord for real. I know he probably was like, who is this? So he was like, yes, we do. I was like, okay. And then I asked him, did they have a van? Did they come pick you up? So they did. So my husband comes home, and I think Saturday he comes home. He said, hey, guess what? I'm off tomorrow. I was like, really? Good. You can go to church with us. And actually that morning we went to church. That's when we joined, because we were all together. And because when my husband stood up and said, oh, okay, yeah, we want to join. Looking at him like, we just got here. And then God said, remember, I said, you guys will be all together. I said, okay, Lord, okay, I understand. So that's how we joined.
But you hit another point that I want to bring up. How important is it, even though being saved, to pray and ask God where to go to worship Him?
Real important. I mean, my kids know I pray about everything.
Because a lot of people church hop. They trying to find this church. They trying to find that church. I ain't happy with this church. I ain't happy with that church. I'm trying to find a place for my kids and all of that. Yeah, the important is ask God, where do you want me to go, Father?
Listen, I'm not going to be doing all of that, okay? I'm not doing all that. God already knows where I'm supposed to be, so I'm going to ask Him to tell me where to go. I pray about everything, and I mean everything. I don't have time for that. God is the one that knows my life. He already knows my life. So I need for you to give me some importation to tell me where I'm supposed to go, what I'm supposed to do. He already knows my life.
My second part of that question is, how important for families to worship together?
It's very important. I mean, to me,
because I do know people who one child go here, or a husband. I know people where the pastor, he's pastor of his church, and the wife is a pastor of another church, and how I'm not saying that's not what God called them to do, but worshiping together as a family. Going through the same thing, feeling the same spiritual flow when the Spirit of God flows in the church, and how that impacts you even when you go home after you leave the church building.
Yeah, I feel like it's important because you're all together, and you can talk about what's going on together. You can highs, lows, whatever, it's all together. Because I did leave that church at one time by mistake. It was a mistake, but I felt like I needed to leave, and God was like, "What are you doing?" But you need to. I feel like you need to worship together because you need to feel and learn everything together. I just think it's easier.
How is it with the kids transitioning from a major city, to the country? And when your kids looking at you, actually, why we here? You just tell them this is where God wants us. What was going through their mind? How did you handle, that and reassure them that they was where they're supposed to be?
Well, my kids, like I told you, now you know how my kids grew up knowing that God God speaks, He speaks. That's So, and when I let them know, and I think I let them know a year. It was a year before Dorian graduated. That God said we're going. Well, I mean, like I said, me and God was having it out before I left Baltimore. So I asked him before I left Baltimore, was I coming back home? And I only asked him that question because I wanted to get prepared in my mind if I was going to be, in another whole state, away from my mom and my sister and my dad. For the rest of my life. I didn't know whether I was going to stay there or what. I didn't know. I just know he told us to move. So I didn't know. So he said, no, you're coming back home. I was like, oh, okay. So I was like, so I'm getting prepared in my brain. Okay, coming back. But I kind of like messed that up too, because I was like, okay, Lord, I don't see us going nowhere. But anyway, and him telling me you're going back home and telling me when, I told my kids a year beforehand. I said, "Oh, God said we're going back home when Dorian graduated." They was like, "Oh, okay." Raven, she was getting ready.
Well, I know her. Yeah.
Raven was getting ready. She was, "Oh, we going back home?" Oh, okay. So she was getting ready. Dorian was trying to go to college in Alabama, and I was like, "No, sir." But I didn't tell him that. Of course, like I said, I pray about everything. So I went to God. I was like, okay, you see this child, right? When you said family going back to Baltimore, we all going. So when I pray, but family, that's in my brain. God already knows that. So I'm like, you're going to have to handle that. You're going to have to handle that because he wants to go to school here. That's not happening. So you have to handle that. So he did. He handled that. And, because I think Raven and Avery were like, "Mommy, do you hear him? He's just that." I said, and she's like, "Why you not mad?" Because God got that. I'm not mad. Oh, he got it. I'm not worried about it. And it did. It turned out like I wanted it to, like God wanted it to. We all moved, to Baltimore. And the transition was like, okay, we here because God said we're supposed to be here. That's how all my kids think, because that's how I think. So that's how they think. And they knew we were coming here because God sent us here. Now, what they were going to be doing when they got here, they're like, okay, we here, what's happening? But if our first thing first, I'm trying to find a church. And I believe, and I feel like it was God all along. Okay, I used to live in Lifeway. I lived in Lifeway. Every time we went in town, I went to Lifeway. But one of my favorite songs was Shifting the Atmosphere. Didn't know who sang it, didn't know the man's name, didn't know what he looked like. Didn't know nothing like that. But Raven would always tell me, "Mom, Jason Nelson has a church." And I'm like, "Who?" She said, "Mom, Jason Nelson." I'm like, "Who?" She's like, "Mom, Shifting the Atmosphere." I was like, "Oh, okay." And I would forget. His name, forget she ever told me. I would forget. And this was like years, you know what I'm saying? So I really feel like God was setting me up, because when we finally, we visited several churches and it was like, that's not it. And Raven did mention it again. She was like, "Oh, Jason Nelson got a church right around the corner." I said, "Who?" And she said, "Ma." So I really believe God was setting me up,
And we knew of him through his father, because my apostle, he used to live in Baltimore. So, they used to visit, when his father John was, bishop. Well, he's still bishop, he's still alive, so we kind of knew of that. I didn't know that they was connected. I didn't know that was his son, but we knew of that church because of his father. But we didn't know that Jason and Jonathan was, because I won't that deep into it, but but we knew of that because of our visit there.
Okay. With
that, and then when I went to the bed, I'm like, okay, I know this place, and me going there, because I was skeptical, being in church, I'm going to this church and this singer is a pastor too.
Right.
And people only come in here, how we are. People only come in here because of who he is. And my mind was, I don't want to be here just because who he is. I want to see God, power of God is here.
That's why I said
you know, I think the first time I was there, I'm running around the church shouting. Which y'all know they look at me like crazy.
See, that's why I feel like God set me up for that, because when she mentioned it the last time, and I was like, oh, okay. I still didn't remember. And she was like, I said, oh, okay. I said, oh, but he sang. I said, that's the singer. She said, Mom, yeah, but that don't mean anything. I said, you right. I said, but if he not saying anything to me, we out, And she was like, I know. And it's crazy, because the first time we went, it was like he was a fly on the wall in the house, because he was speaking on things that we were feeling and we were thinking. We looking into it like, okay, was he in the house? And then the second time we went, it happened again. Avery and my friend, I convinced my friend, because she was already here. She lived in Aberdeen before I got here. She was not in the military, but she had a military job. So she lived in Aberdeen. So I told her, come on, go come to church. I found the church, come to church. So we were hanging out that Saturday, and her son and Avery had a discussion, and they were talking about some things. He was preaching about stuff that they were talking about. They looked at each other like, didn't we just say that yesterday? So after those two, I was like, oh, I'm joining, so because it was God. It was him. So I was like, yeah, no brainer. I was like, this is it.
So tell me, because I don't want to keep you too long, but tell me about now having adult kids who are living for God, and now you have one who you knew that was going to join the military and about to leave, and you already told him, make sure you have a relationship with God, but just with me, but also with God. How did it feel when you have someone who left the household now, one of your sons leave the household, and you want to make sure he still have a covering?
Yeah, that was hard, because I was like, okay, I wasn't too worried about him, because I knew, like I said, God made me a promise personally. Don't know about anybody else's relationship, but God made me a personal promise that he was going to take care of my kids. So that is a promise that he made me. I just reminds God every now and then of his promise. Hey, Lord, you promised you were going to take care of him. And so, and he had his little highs and lows. But when I found out he was going to Virginia, finally, when he went through all of his little stuff and he was in Virginia, I said, okay. I asked him where he was. And I said, okay. I got a literal phone book on my computer and started looking up churches. And I prayed before I did it. I said, okay, Lord, we about to find
something. You in the phone books. God must got you a phone book ministry, anointing.
Yeah, in them phone books. I had a phone book on my computer, and I said, okay, God, we about to find Kyla Church. So I called one church, and they act like they didn't know where the military base was. So we scratched that one. Then I called the church that you and him went to, and like I said, I get on the phone and say crazy stuff. So I get on the phone and I'm talking. I didn't know I was talking to the first lady. I just knew I was talking to somebody.
Because they have a military background. Yeah.
I said, I have a son that's in the military, and I need him to go to church. And she said, and then I asked her, what kind of, faith they were, what they believe and all that kind of stuff. And she started laughing. She said, you a good mama. I said, hey, I'm just trying to find my baby somewhere to go. He need a covering, so he need to go somewhere. So she was like, you know what? She said, she said, and I gave her Kyle's number, and she said, me and my husband are going to pick him up. Now, see, I still didn't know. She was the first lady. I didn't know until Kyle told me. And I was like, what? I was like, oh, Lord. I know she probably thought I was crazy. But they picked him up, and they brought him to church. And I was like, he said, Mama, that was the pastor and the first lady brought me to church. I said, what? I said, oh. I said, tell him I'm sorry. They said, no. Like, she was telling me.
Like that.
Yeah, she was telling me the whole time, you better love your mama, because she called me on the phone from Alabama. She was trying to figure, she said, you in where? I said, I'm in Alabama. She was like, oh my goodness. So she really thought I was, yeah. But yeah, it is important for your children, even though they're in another whole state, country, whatever, to have a covering, Definitely. I was going to try to make sure, I'm like, okay, Lord, I know that you got him, but I'm going to help him.
And that's where I met him. And that's another story for another day, the conversation that we will have later on. But that's been almost, I want to say, it ain't been 20 years yet. It feels like it's been 20 years, but it ain't been that.
It's been a long time.
It's been, I mean, 14 years. I don't know why I'm going to keep on saying 20. That's another question I want to ask you about the process of writing a book. How is that working with you and with God, and how he pulling that out of you?
Well, a lot of things that I'm going to write about, it is basically about my life, and it's about my life with God. And he keeps giving me, the things that happened to me in my life and the things that I went through. And that's what I'm writing about, and to let people know that, hey, he is real and you can really have a relationship with him. A lot of people in this world we don't know really believe that there ain't no God. For real, there ain't no God, or there are many gods. And it's just one. And he is real, and you can have a relationship with him, and your life is destined to do something, and it is set by him. So that's basically what the book is about. And I'm still, in my process of writing. So hopefully I will get my book done and published, and hopefully it will help people to, see him. And I don't care about me per se, but help people to see him. That's basically what I wanted to do. I wanted people to see God.
Yeah. And that's mostly the purpose of this podcast too, that I want people to see God. He can use anybody.
Yes.
And his desire is to use everybody.
Yes, it is.
But it's up to us to be obedient and want to go and do what he wants. But he wants to use everybody.
He does.
People say, if you are called, many are children. He called you. It's up to you to answer it. It's up to you to do it.
Yes.
It's not about, he's using this person because he's the pastor. He's using this person because they're an elder or a prophet or a teacher. No, everybody has gifts.
Everybody has gifts.
Everybody at least have one. Everybody has a gift. Yes. It's up to you to operate in it and work and get with God to show you, inform you how to operate in your gift.
Yes.
Because people have been using their gifts even before they were saved. When the Bible says that the gifts come without repentance, that means that God didn't change his mind when he formed you and he gave you that gift. Now, you have that gift that you saved or not.
That's true.
But it's up to you to have a relationship with God so he can show you how to really, truly operate in that gift.
I agree with that. Now, I don't know what kind of gift I have. All I know that I have is I'm a mother. I'm mothering. I'm on my job. People call me Mama Shawand. I have young people that I have, become friends with. They call me Mama. So I feel like I'm just everybody's mama. So gift of just loving on young people. And I feel like that is something that I want to continue doing. I want to, help young people find God, help them see God, help them know that they can, have a relationship and serve God being young. You don't have to be old to, be in God. You don't have to be, you don't take it.
That's your gift, Mama. That's your gifts. I know people looking for them big old titles, which it's gonna mean nothing when you stand before God. These big old titles mean nothing. What did you do to advance my kingdom?
Exactly. And that, to me, in my head, it's about your kingdom. That's all I care about. I want to grab those young people that I know that God is dealing with, or God knows their destiny. God, give me those children that I can help grow in you. That's all I want. That's what I feel in me, Daddy, anyway.
But being with that, because I'm a close. I don't want to keep you too long. Cause I know you're a busy, powerful woman of God. What do you want people who may have experienced the same things you have in life? What do you want them to know foremost? I know God, but operating in it. What do you want them to know? Who maybe is going through, situations from your teenage years to your family, who maybe have kids in the military and worrying about with everything that's going on in Afghanistan and everything. What do you want the young and the older seasoned mothers to know? More importantly,
I guess, stay faithful. Never waver in thinking that God doesn't see or know. He sees and knows everything. You just keep yourself faithful. You make sure you stay positive. Of course, praying, but knowing that their lives is already set. Whatever it is they're supposed to do, they're going to do. So their destiny is going to be theirs. It's going to be theirs. They're going to do whatever it is that they're supposed to do. Whether they drop off and fall, because that will happen. Even if you see them, they don't look like they're going to do it. They are. It's just going to happen. So stay faithful, stay true to who you are, and always be there. Especially for your kids.
Yeah, family matters completely, and that's something that God ordained. And I just want to say thank you, Mama, for this. I enjoyed myself, and I know we could go on for hours, but I didn't want to be here too long because I just didn't want to have a conversation with me and you talking. I want other people to hear this and realize that if we can go through it, if we can have this situation, they are not by themselves. That we are not, and I wish that the church would stop hiding and covering and let everybody think that they're doing it on their own. That there's other people who are going through the exact same things that you are. And if you trust in God, He will help you. He will bring you out just like He did to us.
He will. No question. He will. Might not come out when you want to come out, but you will. You'll get there.
So thank you, Mama, for this opportunity, and thank everybody who's listening to this podcast, The Right Perspective, and see you next time. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.